9 present.
Excellent. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the December meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Just
Hanson.
one moment while I let those in the waiting room into the room. Sorry, one
Okay.
second. Okay, sorry, we should be good to go now.
Great. All right, now I'm looking for a second for the motion to approve the minutes for the December meeting.
Second, Fowler.
Fowler, great. All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Batten, a second from Commissioner Fowler.
Actually,
Oh,
can
are
I
you-
do that? I don't think I was present, actually. I'm getting my dates mixed up.
David, can he go ahead and make the motion? even if he
You're
was on-
welcome to make the motion if you have no concerns about it, but it might be more optimal if somebody who was there made the motion. Seconds are a little easier.
I was
Um,
present. I can make the motion.
Excellent,
Fowler.
thank you.
You
And a
want to flip
second?
it?
Yes. So Commissioner Batten, do I have a second for that?
Sure, second.
Excellent, all right. So call the vote.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Commissioner Banton.
Abstain.
Commissioner Bradley.
Abstain.
Commissioner Fowler.
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez. Commissioner Hubman.
Abstain.
Commissioner Jorgensen. Commissioner Keon.
Abstain.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams. Chair Boaz.
Aye.
I was going to say abstain, Commissioner Williams here.
Okay. You have 5 voting aye and 5 abstentions.
Excellent. Minutes are approved. All right, the next order of business is we actually have a pretty short agenda tonight. So we have one action item and informational updates following that. And when we do have no public hearing this evening. The first action item is to update the established neighborhood planning area priorities. Jonathan, you want to take the lead on that?
Boaz, and good evening, planning commissioners. I am Jonathan Roper, City Planning Executive for Neighborhood Planning with the Planning and Urban Design Agency for the City of St. Louis. And tonight we have an update to the established neighborhood planning area priorities. This is administrative type of item, which guides staff and what we do. So the purpose of this is to review and consider approval for the additional priority neighborhoods for neighborhood planning resources. And this would include an action to consider 12 additional neighborhoods to receive neighborhood planning resources. Next slide, please. And just to take you back a little bit, because a few commissioners weren't here when we originally kind of began this journey, but in 2017, the City of St. Louis voters passed the economic development tax. And with that, part of the purpose, one was of course, the Metro Green Line, but another was purpose of assisting with neighborhood revitalization. And so with that, the neighborhood planning program kind of was born from the city. And PDA has a 3-part strategy. We did a lot of research, and then it led to prioritizing neighborhoods in 2022 through a set of different data-informed metrics. Currently, of the neighborhoods that were approved, 14 of the 19, 14 of those are underway with a planning initiative. And tonight, we're looking at the future, and we're ready to add more considerations to that. And PDA also, in this process of looking at this, has had outreach to different communities and this decision as well. Next slide, please. And here you can see on the left-hand side, here's a map that shows where the City of St. Louis neighborhoods outlined in white and black, but the blue indicates the 19 neighborhoods that were originally approved by the Planning Commission. And the dark blue indicates the areas that we have yet to start the neighborhood planning process in, and the light blue indicates the areas that are undergoing the planning process. I will also note the kind of the hatched or the kind of the slanted white and black lines indicate the areas that have some sort of adopted plan by the Planning Commission, whether it be a topical plan or a fully neighborhood plan. And what informed those blue neighborhoods on the left-hand side, it was on the right-hand side, it's the different data metrics that we looked at. And you see the square at the bottom, you can take a picture of that and you could go to the story map if you like, so for the 2022 prioritization. But this included things like levels of vacancy, safety, homicides, just opportunity zones, promise zones, a number of just in HUD revitalization areas, HUD census tracts, and a number of other just metrics. Next slide, please. Because again, these lead back to the neighborhood revitalization. So which ones are kind of, which ones really need revitalization kind of resources first. And updating the priority. So from 2022, the Economic Justice Action Plan for the city was developed. And this had a number of goals to strengthen neighborhoods, close the wealth gap, improve health and educational outcomes, expand the tax base, and grow the city's population. And they have the economic justice index categories 1 through 4. One, as you can see on the yellow, being the kind of the most in need, versus the purple being ones that have lesser needs according to the economic justice indicators of need and indicators of opportunity. So we looked at these priority areas as well, or their index as well to inform this decision. And you can kind of see between the two maps where the yellow is on the left-hand map, and then on the right-hand map where a lot of these areas do overlap in some regard. The other area to look at is the light green area where that's economic justice index number 2, where that ranks secondary as well. Next slide, please. And looking at that, we also looked at a number of other stats to highlight or to update the original metrics, but for this, we're just highlighting a few of these. This also looks at the updated HUD qualified census tracts. So there's the Economic Justice Action Plan, plus the white stripes, which indicate the 2025 HUD qualified census tracts, which receives different targeted funding. So we looked at those areas as well, and you could take a look at the map on the right-hand side. You'll notice that there are yellow areas now highlighted. So in addition to the blue, they're yellow. These are the areas that PDA is recommending for approval to receive the next neighborhood planning areas. So these do correspond with the original 2022 priority and those updates, as well as different citywide plans, because we do like to be in coordination with those because of opportunity for different city departments to work together to make transformation happen. It takes more than one department to do that. Next slide, please. And that's a larger map, but those are the neighborhoods, the 12 neighborhoods to consider. So at this point, if this would be approved, basically the neighborhood planning process since the economic development tax was passed under that program, would have planned for over a third of the city, as well as there are existing plans as well, Senior Developer, Week Lab, North Central, Design Downtown, that also we could coordinate more planning for in the city. So currently, it's just the hash lines that we have adopted plans for. As we start filling in the blue and then the yellow, we would have definitely more than a third of a city, but almost even half of the city plan for it. Next slide, please. And the next steps, what would be to come, of course, we would continue, and you'll hear an update later about the planning process and plan areas 1 through 3. But for this planning process, we would look to develop and circulate a request for proposals for consulting support. We're very thankful for our consulting teams that help us with the neighborhood planning. So we would look to more consultants to help us and to plan for the next pending planning areas. And we would also consider which neighborhoods to group together. So we would like to work more with the community to see, hey, this street, for example, is really not a boundary that to plan one plan over here and another plan over here, but we should probably plan this together because a lot of community have a lot of similar assets. So we want to consider more with the community about which exact areas to plan together with, but and after that, we look to begin hopefully planning in Q4 of this year. And this, we did receive also, so in the process, we did speak to a number of community and community members, including O'Fallon and Penrose. And we did receive letters of support, strong support for neighborhood planning at their consideration. They're definitely ready for planning. And of course, and going back to looking at where we're planning for today, these neighborhoods are next door, so a lot of there's a lot of spillover between, hey, we're planning one side of Natural Bridge today. So you see where the yellow is at on the top. Natural Bridge is the dividing line, but a lot of community assets are there. There's a lot of item, just community assets, retail, and honestly, a lot of community and family that just, they don't cross. They cross Natural Bridge, so just considering planning more together in the future for neighborhood planning. But there's a lot of strong support. We also have a letter from Alderwoman Keys as well. We received that. So we received definitely letters from Penrose and O'Fallon, and also Alderwoman Keys, who say, hey, yeah, they're ready for planning. And with that, I will to the planning commission, or I'm sorry, to Miriam or Don for any additional questions. And if not, answer any questions, comments the planning commission may have.
Yeah, no additional comments from me. Thanks for your presentation, Jonathan.
Don, anything from you?
Chair Boaz. I think he may have had to take a call.
Okay, all right, great. Well, then we'll move on to questions from the commissioners. Let's go ahead and go through the list, starting with Alderman Cone. Is he with us? Let's move on to Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Any questions?
She's shaking her head no.
Oh, okay. Let's have a connection problem. All right, great. Then Commissioner Benton.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan, for the presentation. Can you go into a little bit more detail for the area like Dutchtown, where there isn't currently sort of an adopted plan about how that's working with the new areas again, just in a little bit more detail for me, and how that's integrating?
Yes, so any area that has an existing plan, and that's a lot of them. So if you even look at Jeff Vanderloo and above downtown, you see there's hatch lines there. They're doing the
Yeah.
planning area too. So generally speaking, we look at the plan and see how we can just see what has happened, what works, what doesn't, what type of resources are there today, different city staff and departments, and go forward. So generally speaking, if it covers a whole area, we would look to, the action would be, generally speaking, to repeal and replace the plan in the
Okay.
future. But that would be, we would look to work with the community members who have developed the plan, look to the neighborhood associations and definitely gather support. It might not be as large of a lift in some cases because we already have a lot of, I mean, that plan was made with a lot of engagement too and a lot of thought. So it actually just, whenever there's a plan in place, it just makes it a look much more efficient in that case. and to get to what residents really want. So, because we have a great starting point, or a continuing point, I should say.
Gotcha. Thank you. So it looks like this list for 2025, 12 neighborhoods, correct? That is a big lift. Are they all sort of starting at the same time? Are they staggered throughout the year? Or how is that working?
So currently we need to consider, for one, just the resources. I know, I'll just say we don't have the resources for everything, and that's partially why you see the difference between the blues today is because looking at resources. So no, it would be a multi-year effort, but we do just definitely want to look at where we're going and start just trying to strategically plan for where we're going. But no, we're not starting all these in 2025.
Is it fair, Jonathan, to add that we're kind of constantly exploring potential additional resources beyond the EcoDevo funding? So a little bit of a question mark about how much both we would have funding for and capacity to manage as a team.
Oh,
But
definitely so.
it's probably some number of neighborhoods less than all of the 12 listed within 2025.
And it's important to note that funding in the fiscal year and calendar years aren't 100% jive for all our funding sources. So we're juggling that too.
Okay,
Oh,
so I guess I was a little bit confused. So these are the planning priority areas, but not necessarily guaranteed that all of these are going to happen immediately. That's what you're saying.
That's correct. I mean, I would say this, either 2025, 2026.
Okay. And is there a sort of criteria set for sort of which of these goes first? I
Still looking,
apologize if I was not paying attention properly during your presentation, if you answered that.
not at all. So at this point, the look would be to pull where our strengths already are. So the Economic Justice Action Plan, also
Okay,
CDA,
yeah,
is putting a lot of money into some particular areas. So we want to align with those also, because they also have timetables on it. I know
Okay.
yeah, so.
Got it. Thanks.
Hmm.
I'll pass it along to my fellow commissioners.
Great, thank you. Next, Commissioner Fowler.
I just have, Jonathan, thanks for the presentation. I just have one question. I think you sort of already answered it, but for the 2022 neighborhoods that haven't started yet, would those be in priority, or is that just kind of when the funds come in, we would tackle those 2022 additional neighborhoods? Sorry if I missed this. I'm also a newer commissioner, so this is also kind of new for me.
No, thank you for your question. No, those would definitely be priority too. Or remain.
Okay. All right, cool. No further questions. I'm happy to see that the neighborhoods that are in need are getting attention. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Garmendia.
Yes, thank you. One question I have is regarding the neighborhoods that are, I guess I consider them like edge cases. So, or they don't have that many residents now, but when is the next time we might be looking at adding new neighborhoods to the plan or for neighborhood planning? Like that could be 3-5 years from now. So I'm especially thinking about like the South Broadway area, since that currently has like no residents, right? In the, I can't remember how to pronounce that K name neighborhood that no one lives in. Kosciuszko. Oh God, why'd you leave me hanging like that? Someone's supposed to like hop in and.
Yeah. Okay.
That's recorded.
Well, that's a neighborhood I'm thinking of where like right now it has almost no residents, but in the years to come it will be more of a neighborhood. So I understand why it's not on the list today, but like how much of the decision making about adding neighborhoods into the queue are future looking?
So there was also the a part of the original 12 metrics, there were also momentum and change, and part of that was it wasn't always looking at population loss. It did have a population gain that was it was weighted less than population loss because it's much worse to have a big drop versus a big gain. That's good things going on. But like the Green Line Metrolink, for example, is one that was also considered because we want to kind of align and stack different large activities that would really change the landscape and dynamics. So with that said, there Kosciuszko, but someone's out there telling me I'm wrong too. I've heard it another way too. And you know, Kosciuszko, Soulard, and also surrounding after we hit, you know, after we plan with the one on the southeast area, there we would see synergy probably resonating off those areas for one. So I'd say that just like we're seeing in the areas with the blue, we are seeing a lot of synergies just pop up naturally because communities, you know, neighborhoods boundaries officially stop at a street, but the community does not. So there's naturally a lot of that going on, but generally speaking, definitely more take that more into consideration about how the prioritization has changed since 2022. What are some big initiatives? I know Gateway South has happened in that area too. So those are some really big things going on, but yeah, we definitely want to consider those two.
So this is Don. I'll add a couple of big picture concepts, aspects. Is one, yeah, ding, ding, ding. We don't have the resources or the priority or the practical to do all the neighborhoods at a very short time frame. Two, the creation of the neighborhoods were a purposeful means to make sure that every piece of the city of St. Louis was in a neighborhood. As you mentioned, not all of them have a large population, but all of the geography of the city are in a neighborhood. Just like they're in a census tract or a ward, all the neighborhoods, all the geography is in a neighborhood. And in some cases, yes, it's a large physical geography with a very small population.
Thank you, Don. My kind of follow-up question on that is, kind of what it was a little bit skipped over in this discussion was, yes, there's neighborhoods that have previously adopted plans, but some of those plans are old or irrelevant, or less relevant and need to be updated. So just like, how does that, how are we going to be reconsidering some of these neighborhoods that have less up-to-date neighborhood plans? And I'm certainly getting pressure to increase significantly increase residential concentration in particularly downtown. And so that has an older plan, and maybe not one of it like focused on as like a residential neighborhood. So that's, I guess, another question too, is what's the process for updating plans that were done, 7 or more, 10 or more years ago?
Well, downtown and downtown west is more recent than that.
Yeah.
And it's in the hands of GSL to be implementing, so.
Sorry, what? Can you say that again?
So downtown and downtown west, for examples, are just a few years old. And it's also in the Greater St. Louis Inc. is in part supposed to be, along with the other team members, implementing that plan, so.
Okay. And once, if we were to, so the, request for action is to approve these neighborhoods to be incorporated into the list of neighborhoods to be prioritized for neighborhood plans. They wouldn't be like in a queue. Would they be like the ones that haven't been started yet that are still looking for funding? Would they be treated this is, I guess, a follow-on question to Commissioner Fowler's question, which is, are they being, are the ones that are not been addressed yet being prioritized if these were added, or would they be kind of treated equally?
So the idea would be to first finish off the original 19. So we are at 14 out of 19 now and 5 to go. We would look at, and those are the dark blue. Next would be future looking, but I would say that in doing a neighborhood plan, there are some dividing lines between neighborhoods that it might make more sense to consider planning for some of the blue and the yellow together in some cases, because just from the natural, what community assets are there, what they share, if communities are going to develop a plan with the city, and then with the city implement the plan, they do that together, and they have been sharing, hey, like we're wanting to do more things together because our assets, I'll tell you, there's a Schnucks up there on Natural Bridge at Union that is used by the blue and the yellow up there, a lot of the residents. Fairground Park, O'Fallon Park and Penrose. So there's a lot of different assets. The schools, Sumner High School, while it's in the Ville neighborhood, a lot of neighborhoods use different plans. So we want to look at those community relationships and to decide, hey, let's maybe see more of the blue with the yellow together in a planning area and do those together versus doing them as separately. And that's one of the learning lessons we're kind of looking at in the first, in starting this new neighborhood planning. We took steps, did a strategy, and we're evolving the strategy a little bit, not how we do things. So that's part of the consideration that we will have in the future is, Miriam, if you go to the next slide, the next steps is kind of how to consider which neighborhoods to group together in the planning processes. So yes to the blue, but how the yellow comes into play with them as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Great, thanks very much. Is Commissioner Hernandez with us? I don't recall from the roll.
I don't believe so.
Okay, all right, then Commissioner Hubman?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate the presentation. The questions I had have basically already been addressed, but I do have a couple of comments. I would do what I could when you have major corridors like Natural Bridge to really avoid that as an edge condition from a planning perspective. You kind of alluded to that, but you didn't really, you talked about assets. I think corridors are a special case that they really do it. I would recommend doing what you can to include both sides of major corridors in a singular or at least parallel but coordinated planning efforts. The other thing is, and this is just a comment moving forward, MoDOT has recently completed, we worked with them at East West Gateway on a kind of new guidance for arterials. And so you have major arterials in the city that are MoDOT routes, like Natural Bridge, like Gravois. They now have new guidance that really lets them dive into more multimodal and community-based planning, and actually calls out making sure that they account for, or at least are aware of, local community plans when they're diving into their corridor work. So I just make sure that's part of the scope as you get into those. It's relatively new. It's voluntary. However, the St. Louis MoDOT district staff is really advocating strongly for it. Jen Wade is a good advocate. Tom Blair, they're situated and they're interested in really kind of moving this approach forward, allowing them to do things that they haven't been able to do in the past. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Hoffman, and we will definitely look to add those because we're always looking to coordinate with all of the things East West Gateway, MoDOT, and others are doing, and also it makes total sense because sometimes we're learning, like in planning area 2 and 3, West Florissant goes to the county as well. So even in coordinating with St. Louis County too. So
yeah, and just one other thing I just thought of, there are, for the next year and a half, 2 years, there are federal resources for high energy network areas. All of these arterials have, they qualify for demonstration funds or further planning or implementation funds to address high danger spots on these roadways. So that would be something that might help bring resources to the planning effort. I would coordinate with that if you could.
I'll just use that as a good reminder, Paul, that Scott Ogilvy, who works on a number of those things in the big picture and in the practicality of transportation, is a PDA manager's staff member. So.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank
Great.
you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner
Quickly,
Hubman.
Well, I was going to jump in. Commissioner Hubman, I think, raises a good point, or made me think of a point that would merit mentioning, that I do think the citywide strategic land use plan update and the citywide transportation and mobility plan, in places where neighborhood planning is not actively underway or may not be actively underway in the near term, I think are good opportunities to help provide some more general guidance, albeit not specific as detailed as it would be in the neighborhood planning, but some general guidance for things like roadway design that can kind of offer some of that communication and coordination in the interim.
Okay, let's move on to Commissioner Keung.
I think everything I was curious about has been discussed, so no questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Miller?
Okay. Yeah, I had a few questions since I'm fairly new, so I want to, the funding that was provided, how much is that provided, and is that annual? Can somebody talk a little bit about that tax and how much funding that provides on an annual basis?
Don, you're muted.
Yes, I can tell you, in the good old days, when PDA was first started, we get $2.7 million annually come from community development block grant funds. That funds, by the way, is down to about $1 million. So as Jonathan put out on the calendar, the EcoDevo tax got established as a sales tax with a number of different purposes and things, but one of them is this neighborhood revitalization and neighborhood planning. From that tax, in the current year, we have about a little over $3 million. And that $3 million, $3.3 million goes to Jonathan and his team's salary. It goes to pay the consultants. And I take a deep breath and tell you, out of that $3.3 million that comes to PDA, PDA transfers, allows about 800,000 of that to go to SLDC for efforts that they are doing. That is an annual fiscal year budget, meaning it begins July 1st. The block grant budget begins January 1st, just to make life a little bit more complicated. But the punchline here is we're really, really appreciative of the city voters increasing our sales tax. So there is this EcoDevo money on an annual basis, and it floats with what the tax creates and what might be carryover balances. But having that, as we hear, and you know, this is a multi-year effort, as a steady stream is sort of the secret sauce to this being an ongoing program.
Okay, thank you. My other question has to do with the plans in general. I know some of them are further along than others, but you mentioned some of the money going to SLDC. I mean, plans are great things, but some of the neighborhoods are so diverse. And, you know, one of the reasons we're not planning in Lafayette Square right now or in Shaw is because we do have a lot of activity, a lot of growth. and a lot of developers who want to build and develop in that area. So, but when you're looking at certain areas, the Ville, areas, some of the areas in Penrose, some of those are quite diverse. Some of them, we have blocks that are strong, contiguous areas that are relatively strong, but we don't have developers. We don't have a hot market as we could, but we still have significant amount of homeowner activity. Whereas in other areas, say just west of the NGA area, where we have blocks and blocks of vacant land and virtually nothing. So some of those areas that need preserving, we need development activities by the private sector, and in other areas, the city, outside of having development corporations, but the city and the public sector are the biggest economic entity or actor in the area. So are we getting in these plans, and Jonathan, you can probably answer, and Don too, first of all, other city departments participating in depth with the planning process and that distribution of city assets, the park department, the street department. I know we're having transportation plans, but we spend money every day in these neighborhoods. And or is BPS and the Parks Department, are they included, and what's the apparatus for getting them included? And I know we talked about zoning and getting the zoning code and using that in our land use plan to enforce some of these plans, but what about the city departments themselves?
Pretty long list there you gave.
Yeah,
So.
well, you can handle it, Don, you got experience.
Yeah, no, so one is the city, the planning process per se is not equivalent to the city budget process. So we do have, Rich Bradley's on the planning commission, so he sees us. He has funds and programs to be implementing. We also have some ex officio members on the planning commission from other city departments that Jonathan is keeping more and more informed in the given neighborhood work, so they're hearing from the neighborhoods themselves. But it's not necessarily formally an input into the city budget through the planning process. But a good thing, trying to herd those cats.
If I could add on to that. So one of the, I guess, the overall mission guidance of this is we really want to provide guidance, help to provide guidance and direction to different decisions that you make about land use. And a lot of the decisions that the different departments make is regarding land use and how that impacts people and their well-being. So in this neighborhood planning process, we do have a number of neighborhood plans already adopted by the planning commission, but they say a number of different items. Generally speaking, they do talk about housing, but they have different terminology, different language, and trying to have the different departments use these plans that say different things, have different maps, can be quite overwhelming at certain points, and it gives you too many things to do, and staff already has their priorities and principles. So we're trying to look at what do people already do and what do they want to aspire to, and bring some new options to different staff members. And so, hey, if we're working with, Mr. Paul Hub and Commissioner Hubman mentioned the MoDOT side of things and what they're looking to do. And so we're going to talk to East West Gateway, talk to MoDOT about, hey, this is what you're looking for. This is the pot of money you're looking at here. We also identify in this different city departments with more money. So CDA has money, streets, they do have projects and money. We do want to talk and be a convener of these in the planning process as well. So we build a plan together They identify different funding sources or what priorities are, and as priorities are known, they can also kind of go after it, and they know they have a plan behind them too that has been adopted by the city. So ultimately, in this process, we want to do different working groups, open houses, meetings, interviews with different city staff, and also third parties outside of the city to see what they can bring philanthropic included too.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
And then I would finally note that people like, I'll just note Corinne Hanks, shout out to her. She's on the line with SLDC, a neighborhood transformation manager. So we want to work with, we do work with them too in this process and others as well.
And I'll make the point specifically about us at 1520. The three bigger development agencies, SLDC, Planning and Urban Design, CDA, all on the second floor, all have a common receptionist, all have it so on a daily basis, our staff doesn't have to go through security to go talk to one of the other staffs to try to get those synergies. And particularly, of course, the big leverage is with the CDA money or SLDC and doing redevelopment plans and alignment with the SLOOP and alignment with neighborhood plans. And of course, April Ford Griffin and affordable housing is right outside our door. So.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, Commissioner Williams, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, great. All right, Jonathan, do you want to frame the motion that you're looking for from us?
Tracy, you forgot me.
Oh, I apologize. How did I miss you? Commissioner Bradley.
Alderman Cone is on the line as
Don
well.
even gave you the lead in by saying I was on the call.
Well,
So
I knew you were on the call. I just forgot I missed you. I
it's all
apologize.
good. I love
Really
being missed. That's great. So
Cool.
presentation, Jonathan, a lot of good questions. And Don, being a member of the Economic Development Tax Board, I look forward every year to hearing your report on how these neighborhood plans are going. And I will say for the good of the order here, that in the past, the reports have been excellent. So there's a lot of good work that's being done. This is just another step to add more neighborhoods. And I'm really proud of that and really happy what you guys are doing. So thanks for all the good work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, my apologies, Commissioner Bradley. Alderman Cone, you had questions?
No, just wanted to echo the sentiments shared by Commissioner Bradley, and thank you.
And now just speak up and say, let's wish Commissioner Bradley a happy birthday because he had a milestone birthday.
25. That was great.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. All right, Jonathan, you gonna frame that motion for us?
Well, thank you, Commissioners, for all your question discussions. And the action is to the Planning Commission to approve the 12 additional neighborhoods to receive neighborhood planning resources.
Excellent. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Alderman Cone.
All right, and a second?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion from Alderman Cone and a second from Commissioner Williams. Call for a vote.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Commissioner Banton,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez, Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Jorgensen, Commissioner Keown, Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Chair Boaz,
Aye.
and the motion passes with all present voting aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thanks for a great presentation, Jonathan. You
And-
did a great job
And
responding
Tracy,
to all those questions. Oh, Don?
Tracy, I'd like to do such a little wrap up on this one.
Okay.
Is Jonathan, with this action, we now have how many in the list that we aren't currently engaging in neighborhood planning? We have 12 plus how many currently holding over?
Five more.
5 more. So great. We have the neighborhoods underway and now we have a tranche of 17. to be able to be working on with our additional funds and talent to do this. One of the things that Jonathan, and we've talked about and made some observations and understanding is there's a companion piece Jonathan mentioned briefly that went along with the development of neighborhood planning. And that was a series of research from around the country that produced things such as the minimum standards to be in an adopted neighborhood plan. The other thing that we've learned is that the overall management of the consultants, it's nice to think that almost anybody can do that. But my preference is that with the training, and as you hear from Jonathan, our learning and our experience, that when we supplement the in-house staff with consultants for doing neighborhood planning, that those consultants should be engaged and under contract with PDA in the city of St. Louis to give Jonathan and his team the overall management of that. And so that's my way of saying how we should proceed in the future. But of course, that doesn't mean money can't come from other sources, but the contracting party should be under obligation to the city of St. Louis and the Planning and Urban Design Agency to follow the scope that we've advertised. So thank you for the good work that's been out there. Thank you for the neighborhoods participating. It is a multi-year project, and we've been learning and tweaking as we go. And welcome to have Jonathan on the board, on board to be heading this effort. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent, thank you. All right, that concludes our action items for tonight. We've got a couple of informational items though. Let's go ahead and start with a strategic land use plan update. Miriam?
Yeah, super quick update. And then I'm gonna turn it over to James Pfister. By the way, Miriam Keller, City Planning Executive for General Planning and Design at the Planning and Urban Design Agency. But a fun informational item within this update to get us all in the SLOOP spirit. But the update with the process overall is that we're currently putting kind of very final touches on the draft that will be made available by early next week for public review. It'll be made available online, of course, and also in several physical locations around the city, including PDA's offices. We'll have a survey, people can call a number with comments, and of course, people can write to us with comments. And we will have the formal presentation and at least open up a public hearing at the February meeting. So great progress there, and I'm looking forward to next month and getting that draft up and out. But I'm going to hand it over to James Pfister to, like I said, get us in the new SLOOP spirit.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, commissioners. I'm James Pfister, senior planner with PDA. You may recognize me from last month's planning commission, in which I was talking about the expanded Danforth Campus Community Unit Plan. In order to give you all a look forward as to how the new SLOOP, once adopted, might be referenced or reviewed, we decided to take the CUP proposal from last month and sort of run it through the new SLOOP ringer and see what we got. Fortunately, practically it works really well, but I thought we'd sort of talk through this process and what you might see moving forward when we are referencing and referring to the new SLOOP post-adoption. So first, I just wanted to share the slide that you saw last month, in which I was referencing the strategic land use plan as it pertains to the expansion area of the Danforth Campus Community Unit Plan. This is the exact same slide, and there's a great handful of sentences there. If we could go to the next slide, please. Those sentences come directly from the existing strategic land use plan. That's the entirety of the description for the institutional preservation and development area designation. The reason why I wanted to show this is because we're about to start working with a strategic land use plan that has a lot more information, some more guidance in certain places, but also just more opportunities for staff and commissioners to review all types of proposals against the strategic land use plan. So as you can see, this image is taken right from the designation page from the existing sloop. It's relatively limited scope of review. There aren't that many recommendations for what happens within this sloop designation area. And it's a little more challenging to make specific decisions related to zoning using this existing designation. Let's go to the next slide. I apologize. I know this is small text. I don't imagine you're going to read all of this, but I wanted to show you these 4 pages contain the entire spreads of the new campus designation. Every land use designation in the new sloop will have this level of detail. I just wanted you to get your eyes on it. I know you've seen it before, but I wanted to impress that the new designations contain more information. Particularly important to things like zoning amendments, zoning changes, rezonings. There are specifically encouraged and discouraged uses in every designation. That will become very, very important for us, for staff. There are recommended regulations for height, for parking, and general character. And there's also additional qualitative descriptions for future land use for each designation. So let's go to the next slide. So this is on your right, you'll see a small zoom in of the piece of the parcel map, the proposed new sloop parcel map that pertains to the Danforth Campus Community Unit Plan. As you can see, the entirety of the existing CUP and the expansion area are both campus designation. So here's a little bit about that new designation. Campuses are locations of major institutions that have distinctly different character than the rest of the city. There's often a common uniting mission in which institutions in the campus engage in their own long-term planning. Campuses should be encouraged to connect to the street and their surrounding community at their edges. So there's a line in the draft sloop right now that says campuses should not feel like fortresses. Another thing included in the new designation is how each particular designation pertains to the overall goals of the sloop. These are on the bottom on the left side. The relevant goals related to campuses in the sloop are that we build from and improve on assets, that we create safe, accessible spaces, and foster more places for jobs. Next slide, please. I want to pull out some specifics about the campus designation that pertain to the CUP expansion area for the Danforth campus. As you can see, there are recommendations related to height in the campus designation. There's no maximum height listed. A lot of that will be determined in the eventual zoning designation. There's the maximum residential units is not applicable. 2 that are important here is parking is not allowed in front of buildings along major streets within the campus designation, and parking on the side depending on the eventual zoning. Parking on the side might be regulated in certain ways. When it comes to the encouraged or discouraged uses, the uses that were proposed in the expansion area CUP of the Danforth campus, such as offices, such as research and development activities, and things that serve the surrounding community, particularly the university community, those are all encouraged and allowed uses within the land use designation. None of the newly permitted by right uses from the expansion area are any of the discouraged uses in the campus designation. Automobile related commercial activities, drive-throughs, industrial uses, or open spaces that have limited access. Let's go to the next slide. This is just a site plan. You've seen it before, but it helps us talk about some of the decisions that we would make when engaging with Washington University if the strategic land use plan had been in place when they were applying for expanding their CUP. We might be able to say, like, your updated regulations just specify that there will be a minimum of 8 parking spots on the lot, and they'll have ADA and EV ready parking spaces. We might be able to say before the application actually came to the Planning Commission, well, can you also include in your regulations that there will be no parking allowed in front of the building along the major streets? Fortunately, I don't think that's something we need to worry about because we have this site plan and we trust Washington University to do this, but that's an opportunity in which staff is able to sort of talk with the developer and say, how do we bring this proposal, how do we bring these new regulations more in line with the strategic land use plan? I'm going to stop right now because I've already spoken too much, but if anybody has any questions for me, I'm ready for them.
No questions, but you just see that we're tire kicking. Mariam will talk about the schedule for the sloop, but we're tire kicking with staff of how we're going to use it in practical ways. So.
Any questions from the commissioners?
James, I just want to say this is a great example of how to use it and where it comes in handy. So thanks for doing this. Very useful.
Any other questions?
Yeah, no questions here.
Not a question. I'm just excited. Cool to use the new sloop in this way, or Miriam knows I like to make the joke that it's slurp. So I'm excited to be slurping.
Great, thank you. All right, how about updates on other major planning initiatives?
Yeah, I think just a few to share, and also just want to share every month, but really every day, we're reminded how lucky we are to have James on our team. So thanks, James, for the presentation. So as we do every month, there's quick updates where relevant on kind of how things are going with other major planning initiatives beyond the ones that are involved with major informational updates or action items. So I'm actually going to toss it back to Jonathan for a quick neighborhood planning update.
Well, thank you, Miriam, and good evening once more to you planning commissioners. This evening we have the neighborhood planning areas update. So I'll start with planning area 1, which includes the Ville, Greaterville, Kingsway East, and also the Martin Luther King Culture Corridor Plan, which is led by For the Ville and Mr. Aaron Williams, your fellow commissioner. So just a few updates. So in December, we wrapped up with a culture corridor. They have a partnership with WashU and Studio Lab at Sumner and the Economic Empowerment Center. And so we hold meetings there, but also on December 14th, we actually had a neighborhood corridor bus tour where we went along from Cherokee Street in Maplewood. We went all the way to Webster to Delmar and just toured different, and the Grove too, and the Hill as well. And actually this picture is from the Hill with a lot of our participants and teams. The culture corridor liaisons you see in the pictures as well. Those for them and the neighborhood planning committee members of Plan Area 1. So just so they can really just take in, and I'll actually maybe Aaron, if you want to say anything about that tour, but no, okay.
Sure. I mean, the intent of the tour was just to allow them to sort of step outside of the limitations that their current community presents to them and allow them to dream a little bit about what their own corridor can look like by experiencing other corridors in the region.
Thank you, Aaron. And we'll have more tours set up. So awesome partner between Studio Lab, WashU, and For the Ville, and just look forward to that more. We're looking at existing conditions report up and coming. So there's one draft that we're just still working on. And that will be actually a component of our next activities with the community. There's also a SOAR survey out, or strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and resources it's available on planstl.com now, so you could take a look at that and encourage community members also to take that survey. There will be a winter workshop available February 5th. And actually, I'll note there is a location that's not the location, or that's not a confirmed location. So we're just going with a date and a time at February 5th, 2025. But you'll have more details soon and more details for the community. At that meeting, we'll have the charrette with the MLK Culture Corridor and a lot of activities where you can envision your neighborhood and just bring out the creativity for what people want to see, because we want to hear it. Also, the Culture Corridor has a storefront opening. So this is actually a piece between Aaron, I could actually defer to you real quick too to talk about storefront.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
so for the corridor and the neighborhood planning processes, we're opening like a storefront info center where people from the community can just drop in and get updates on how the processes are progressing. On MLK, we're opening it on MLK.
Yeah, so the 4100 block just across the street from it. If you see the Tina Turner mural, that's like the bat signal for this place. So you'll see it right next to that. Well, across the street from that. And then we have a neighborhood planning committee meeting and we're just keep going with more activities. Next slide. Just newer normal activities for planning area 1, planning area 2. They are working also on their different analysis. Right now they have a strengths and weaknesses activity going on, and you can see this is from the last neighborhood planning committee meeting where there were some responses of what different members wanted to see. The kickoff party, the flyer to the right, that's on January the 25th from 11 to 2 p.m. and that's at the YMCA O'Fallon Recreation Center. So just looking forward to that. If you know people in the area, please go to planosteel.com. There's more information there, but it's open to community members. And also we're doing the next neighborhood planning committee meeting coming up soon, and also we're signing up ambassadors. So if you want to be for one on the neighborhood planning committee meeting or neighborhood planning committee for those 3 neighborhoods, if you're a resident of those or a community member there, and also ambassadors, if that's a paid position. So we're looking for community members in those areas. A lot of it's engagement activities, door knocking, canvassing, but getting really the energy out there to the people. Next slide, please. And planning area 3, that's a picture from, I did update or go through the update for the December 10th information session, but the next one coming up is the Climate Readiness and Sustainability Tour. We'll have a number of city staff and also community members on that to tour the 2 neighborhoods to talk about sustainability initiatives. And also we're signing up neighborhood planning committee members and also ambassadors as well. So there's a flyer there to your right, and you could also use the QR code to scan and for more information. Next slide. Oh, actually, and I'll just end with Project Connect. So Project Connect is also continuing with neighborhood planning committee meeting next week, and they're also planning another community activity and just progressing with their planning initiative, and they are expected to in the future will coordinate a more thorough project update with Project Connect, because they are definitely doing a lot of work, but also we want like SLOOP or the Transportation Mobility to have the planning commission a little bit more engaged with what's going on in the plan. So with that, thank you very much for your time and the
With
updates.
that,
And
I'll just add a context, Jonathan, that the 3 that you talked about today as planning areas 1, 2, and 3 are all places where your staff is working on, and PDA through their RFP process have consultants under contract in those 3 areas. And then thanks for the quick update that the Project Connect via SODC in partnership with us, but their consultants are getting close to the finish line of finishing for those 6 neighborhoods. So that's good.
Can I
Hey,
ask a
Don, can I ask?
question?
Oh, go ahead.
Jonathan, so you were going through the planning areas and some of the neighborhoods there, obviously they share resources as Mr. Upman mentioned earlier, by going down Natural Bridge or streets that abut each other. But some of them are drastically different. So how are you in this planning processes kind of distinguishing different priorities for different neighborhoods where, some of them are dramatically different in terms of housing structure, quantity, population, and so forth. So how do you manage that in your process?
the commissioner. The planning areas, we have the early pieces of a planning process is speaking with the neighborhoods,
Right.
the existing conditions and looking at existing plans And so looking at the existing plans, they might already identify a lot of those differences or aspirations where, and there might be focus areas or special topics already in those existing plans, and that includes even redevelopment plans as well, or in any different types of zoning, like special zoning districts. The existing conditions analysis would definitely look at, we could distinguish between year property was built, which might distinguish different characters that might be different than more recently built houses. There's different lot sizes, occupancy. So if there's a number of, I'll just note there's a lot of large lots that are pretty occupied, that might signal one style versus smaller lots. That's so we look between in the existing conditions with the planning staff, we look at what are similarities, what are differences. We are on the ground as well, so a lot of we're taking pictures of the different styles of architecture or different needs, but it also then circles back to community. So in these existing conditions, for example, with Plan Area 1, the Plan Area 1 existing conditions does look at, and it does recognize the number of architecturally significant gyms in the area. And it does distinguish between different areas. We also look to bring that back to community and develop that with community, because community also needs to say, hey, yeah, you got it right, or actually it's about 3 blocks north, you need to expand that area because there's, we don't agree with the street is not Marcus, it's Taylor that this transition happens or something. So we listen to that and then we keep planning. Oh, and then at the end of the day, there's an implementation matrix that also looks at, so what are we trying to do? What are we communicating? So let's just say if there's an area that's fully occupied, they might have similar or different needs than an area that's halfway occupied. Both might have, their houses might be built in the same decade, 100 years ago. However, an unoccupied block might need a few more responses to get that up and running, to fully occupancy than an occupied block. So we look at what the needs are and document it and go forward.
Okay, so like in planning area 3, do you end up with 2 plans, plan for Baden and a plan for North Point, or do you end up with 1 plan?
For there, we're looking at ending up with 1 plan, and sometimes even we want to recognize that there are 2 different neighborhood groups. So in the plans, we could have different special focus areas that actually looks at one versus another, because we do recognize sometimes, there are block captains that are, that are pretty strong in the area throughout the St. Louis that have particular one block focus versus another. So at the end of the day, we try to end up with 1 plan. However, we do take out special focus areas if need be, but the plans, the mapping could be very descriptive as to what responses or what guidance should occur.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners?
No questions.
Okay. All right. I think that leaves, I guess we've got, Don, were your comments your final comments, or do you still have an executive
No,
director?
I'm going through that.
Okay.
This
Thank
is
you.
the executive director is where I'll wrap up.
Okay.
Miriam, you want to talk about this quickly?
Super quickly, just zoning overhaul. Actually, this whole graphic over here no longer relevant because the contract is executed. Great ARPA funding, so that had to happen by the end of the year, and it did. So we're actually starting in with internal coordination with the team next week, and something that will be coming to you all generated by members of that team is a memo that describes not just the importance of the zoning code update and implementing the strategic land use plan, but also how to use the SLOOP to manage this kind of interim period before we have zoning districts that are better matched with the goals of the land use plan. That will be a technical memo, but I think very useful to staff that we also want to share with commissioners. So you're kind of have the same information and guidance along with us and have the opportunity to ask questions, help us all collectively refine our approach. But just very excited for this milestone to be reached and to kind of start in on this project with the great team. And again, in very close partnership with the zoning section of the building division.
Miriam, can you share who the team is?
I can now. It is a team that is interdisciplinary and multi-teams, but led by Code Studio, which is a team with several offices around the country, including Austin, Texas, LA, and Cleveland. They were actually a sub-consultant on the strategic land use plan team. So I think that will help us kind of get up and running relatively more quickly. They're very knowledgeable of the SLOOP process, all of the community engagement that occurred with that, but then also the implications of the plan for land use and zoning regulation generally.
Add the lawyer.
Yeah, a lot to, I wasn't a member of the selection committee, so I did take that for what it, but I'm really excited about the team. One of the strengths is that they have a Missouri-based land use lawyer as part of the team, which I think will be a very helpful complement to our city councilor's office, who also will be part of the process, but somebody who knows Missouri land use law, has seen how other cities kind of do and don't operate with their, not just codes, but also processes and policies in administration. And I think it'll give us a lot of ideas and clarity and confidence as we move through the process.
And I'll do an addition to that. As Miriam mentioned, she wasn't on the selection committee per se, she staffed it. But part of the reason for that is put Mary Hart Burton in a selection committee role to help with the familiarity, seeing all the people that came before us, and just getting incorporated in the overall process. And they have other sub-consultants in terms of community engagement and some other specifics. And they have some folks that are essentially sort of counsel from cities around the country that has faced with zoning issues. That will be sort of our questions to ask them, just things to bounce off. And we appreciate having folks with a diversity of backgrounds to just ask questions as part of this goes through. It's going to be a lengthy process. And remember, at the end of the result is, while we have a very old and archaic zoning code, we can only do this update to the zoning code properly with the new strategic land use plan elements of the comprehensive plan. And we got to remember, a lot of people, the front-facing thing about land use regulations is zoning, and amen that we'll have after this process, that new zoning code and new zoning map. And if it's time, Tracy, for me to roll that right into the executive director's report, I will.
Please go right ahead.
And really what I want to do is what I've heard from the commissioners is thank folks, staff, citizen members, our commissioners advising and poking and prodding and helping for the success and the amount of heavy duty work, truly great work that we've done in the past year and helping us launch into 2025. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you very much to all the staff for their presentations and to the commissioners for the great conversation. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Have a great evening, everyone. Stay safe out there.
Take it easy, guys. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Sure.